Welcome to the ACSM Brown Bag and Science webinar. We're thrilled to have Neil Pyer and Andreas Stamatis as our guests today. You'll hear more about them in just a minute, but first, we wanted to let you know that this year we've been using the Brown Bag series to highlight various ACSM regional chapters. We've been starting each Brown Bag with someone from the regional chapter, a leader, a student, etc., and telling folks a bit about some of the activities of the chapter. Then the presentation will be from a member of the chapter. Today's presenter is a member of the Greater New York Regional Chapter. So first, let me tell you a few housekeeping items. Our presenter will give us a 25 to 30-minute talk, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. Please type your questions into the question area on the GoToWebinar screen, and we will take as many questions as possible after Dr. Stamatis' talk. If you have trouble hearing or seeing the presentation, it's likely due to your internet connections. Please log off and log back into the webinar portal. We will record the presentation, and within 7 days, we will send you the link to the recorded version. We will also place it on the acsm.org website. Our previous Brown Bag webinars can be viewed there as well. So again, we thank you all for joining us today. At this point, we're going to hear a little bit more about the New York chapter from Neil Pyer, who is the Executive Director of the Greater New York Regional Chapter.
Hello, I'm Neil Pyer, Executive Director of the Greater New York Regional Chapter of the American College of Sports Medicine. ACSM is the premier sports medicine professional association in the world. And where better than the greatest city in the world to come network with your colleagues, learn, and drive your career forward. The Greater New York Regional Chapter was launched in 1982 with our early chapter leaders, Dick Warner, our first president, and Bernard Guten, better known as Bob Guten to his friends, the chair of the Exercise Physiology Department at Teachers College, Columbia University. Throughout the years, we have partnered with academia, the medical community, students, and the fitness industry in order to expand our horizons and bring more professionals into our fold. We welcome you not just to participate actively in our committee work with the organization, but also our podcast series and our spring and fall meetings. We usually have a spring meeting in April, fall meeting, which is our annual meeting in November. Students are welcome to participate in their Student Bowl in the spring and the President's Cup research competition in the fall. So there's a lot to be learned and there's a lot to be done and gained from participating actively with the Greater New York Regional Chapter. Without further ado, I'd like to present today's presenter for ACSM's Brown Bag presentation, Andreas Stamatis, who also serves as the chair of the Research Committee for the Greater New York Regional Chapter, American College of Sports Medicine. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pyer. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Andreas. He's an associate professor, the undergraduate program coordinator, and lab director in the Department of Exercise and Nutrition Sciences at the State University of New York in Plattsburgh. His Ph.D. is in educational psychology from Baylor University. Dr. Stamatis is best known for his research in mental toughness in sport. He has authored and co-authored many peer-reviewed articles, and he has given talks in several countries on this topic. Besides academia, Andreas has worked many years as a strength and conditioning coach in Europe and the US. He is originally from Greece, where he owns and runs a variety of health and fitness businesses. So we welcome Andreas, and at this point, we'll turn it over to him for his presentation.
Thank you, Lynette. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here today. I always wanted to be a part of the Brown Bag series, and here we are. It's also an amazing honor to represent my chapter, the Greater New York chapter, and also my school, SUNY Plattsburgh. So as you can see, the background is our campus, and the snow has melted now, so it starts looking like that. All right, so yes, my name is Andreas, and I'm originally from Greece. I'm sure you can hear the accent. And today I am honored to take you on a journey that started several years ago, and it has to do with my passion in research, which is mental toughness, and more specifically mental toughness in sport. I have created something unique for today. I decided to not only present the work of my collaborators and mine, but also give you a general idea about what we know so far, what we don't know, and then position our work based on those two things. So I've used several recent literature reviews, and I'm attempting to do a review of the reviews today, and then add our work in there and see what gaps we are trying to cover. So as you can see, we have these four main categories for today. As I already said, we are going to talk about what is known, then talk about what's left, and what we are doing with our work, and then we're just gonna wrap it up, okay? So if you're ready, let's talk about what we know. And as you will see, a lot of times I will have some small letters over there, just showing you the sources of this presentation. This presentation is a Prezi, obviously, and it is open, so you can find it easily, or I can share it with you at the end. So mental toughness. Mental toughness is very, very popular. And if you just turn on ESPN, I'm sure you'll hear it 5 to 10 times per day. It's popular in academia. It's popular in between coaches. It's popular in between athletes, sport agents, journalists. It's something that we hear about all the time. Why do we care about mental toughness so much? Well, we have evidence. We have enough evidence to know that on average, if you are mentally tougher, your performance is higher. So there is a strong association, positive correlation between mental toughness and success in sport. And of course, we're all very interested in that success, right? It's also interesting because it is a trait-like characteristic. And by that, I mean that there are at some extent, it can be developed. And this is very interesting because it affects, of course, our line of research, because we're now trying not only to identify it, but also find ways to create safe and efficient protocols, interventions to increase it. Another fun fact about mental toughness is that because it's a newish construct out there, most of the research has been done in the past 2 decades. We have still some issues, and some of the main issues are in the department or in the category of conceptualization. Several people are investigating, mental toughness, but we do not have consensus on what it is. Of course, we have done a lot of steps towards some common definitions, but you won't find one definition that everybody agrees on. All right, so I said that we're going to talk about what we know in terms of 3 subcategories: conceptualization, measurement, and training. Let's start with conceptualization. So, as I already said, as a new term, most of the work that you will find in mental toughness has to do with trying to define it. Two seminal pieces are the Jones, if you want to look it up, from 2002, and then Class from the same year. They both use inductive method, and I hope you understand that when something is new, we don't have a theory, we're trying to create a theory. So we have a lot of work out there that's inductive and is trying to understand, define, conceptualize the term. I'm not going to go into details because this is not the point of this presentation and we don't have that much time, but if you have any questions at the end, I will definitely be happy to expand more. Geographically speaking, a lot of research coming from the UK, also from Australia, my very good friend Daniel Gucciardi, which I will refer to several times today, and there are some people like myself in the US. As you can see again, the types of countries that are producing most of the research are developed countries, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. It could get problematic. Now, the conceptualizations for mental toughness, they can be unidimensional or multidimensional. And again, I don't want to go into detail, but the multidimensional conceptualizations like the one from CLAF, that if you are into mental toughness, you know what I'm talking about, the 4C model, control, commitment, challenge, and confidence, says that those different components can stand by themselves. The unidimensional say that all these components have common ground and they in a way become one thing that's called mental toughness. So if we go into measurement, as you understand, if you have several definitions, you will have several tools, right? Several instruments. Again, I'm not going to show you how many, but just to have an idea, for mental toughness in sport, there are at least 12, okay? There are some that are sport specific, some of them are more universal, and so on and so forth. The most popular that I need to mention is Mental Toughness Questionnaire 48, which is the baby of CLAF, which I mentioned in the slide before. It is very popular, however, psychometrically there are some issues that I need to point out. A very recent review from 2020 from Texas State went over the instruments and found that the most psychometrically sound are MEB Tough, MTI, which is the one that I'm usually using, Mental Toughness Index from Daniel Gucciardi, and MTQ18, which is a short version of MTQ 48. Again, I know I'm going a little bit into theory, but I think it's important so we can understand what we do and why we do it. And the last thing that we need to investigate here concerning what we know is the interventions, the training, the development, right? We have evidence-based intervention. I did say that most of the work has to do with defining it and conceptualizing it, but there are interventions out there, and actually I will show you in a little bit. One of our meta-analysis did this to try to figure out if they are effective. So they are effective, however we found high bias, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So we have work out there, but what you need to remember is that is not of high quality, unfortunately, yet. Now, in general, environment that could develop mental toughness has to do with the following. It has to have some conditions that they're difficult to deal with, but at the same time, the coach, for example, has to offer the resources to deal with those conditions. And the third condition is that the athlete needs to be highly motivated. Another thing that we know about development of mental toughness is that in the very early years, what is really important are, of course, the experiences and creating the environments for those kids. As they're moving to the middle years, modeling, looking others becomes very important, and creating the necessary skills. All right, we're done with the first out of the 4 parts. Let's move now to what needs to be discovered. And I'm going to first talk about some gaps in the literature and then take it into the basic and applied research. The gaps in the literature, again, we're going to see them in the same way, conceptualization, instruments, and training. So let's start with conceptualization. What we do need in the literature, of course, is more clarity in the definition. As you understand, in psychology, we need to define a term that is psychological and that it has its own level of difficulty. And then based on that, create instruments, and then based on those, create interventions that we can measure and see their effectiveness. So this is a very basic problem right here, because this is the beginning of all the literature. So we need better definitions. We need better conceptualizations. That's one. Concerning instruments, what we can do is, of course, keep developing instruments as we are developing better definitions and conceptualizations, but also, and that's something we do, the second thing is keep using the instruments we have, because by just using them, we can offer some evidence on whether they are psychometrically sound or not. Third thing that we are missing is, of course, interventional work. We need protocols that are efficient, and we need protocols that are of high quality. The few protocols that we have are mainly psychological, and some of them are psychological with a little bit of physical in it. We don't have any physical protocols. Of course, that's hard to develop and create, but no matter what we use, the contextual knowledge is something that we have been missing. So either you base it on the hope theory or the balance theory of wisdom, or something newer like the superior performance intelligence. They all talk about knowing the environment you need to apply something. So this is really important that we've been missing that. All right, if we see it from a side of basic and applied, first of all, I want to make a comment that there is a lot of space for interdisciplinary work. It's time the psychologist, the mental coach or consultant is part of that team, because we all, I think, know that the psychological part is very important for performance. Now, as you all know, it's not that basic is better than applied or the other way around. Both of them are very, very important. We need basic. Without basic, we cannot have applied. Applied, then again, informs basic, and there's that cycle of like that bi-directional relationship between them. Concerning basic, let's start with that. What we want and what we need is be better in the construct validation, and that can happen with better theories. And concerning operationalization, it will happen with better measurement. When we go now and we switch it to applied, I'll show you some of the things we need to do, and that's a table that it's part of our work, of our meta-analysis, and I want to stay here for a little bit. One issue that we have is, for example, we do not include women are under investigated. That's an issue. There is some sports that are under investigated. Also, you need to understand that most of the instruments about mental toughness have to do with self-assessment. So you are assessing yourself. So pretty much you're telling us what you think about yourself, right? Which is, okay, common practice, very convenient, but also has weaknesses. So multi-rating, so you're getting rated by a teammate or by your coach, is a thing that we have to keep promoting and encouraging. We definitely need to do research in non-Western countries. The cultural background, mental toughness will be part of a nation's culture. So we need to investigate that. We're missing that part, and that's something we need definitely to do on top of everything else we talked about. And the last thing I want to say is that most of the research in mental toughness, which kind of makes sense, but we need to fix it, is cross-sectional. So the vast majority, above 80%, is cross-sectional. Cross-sectional is great, a lot of advantages, but we need to move into longitudinal designs. Okay, we need multiple repeated measurements. All right, so that's from our work, and what else do we need to do? So there's a lot to do with mental toughness, and here I'm just giving you some ideas that other people have suggested, or I see going over the literature. Again, it's a term that's been out there for just 2 decades, so there's so much to do if you want to get involved. All right. First of all, there are a lot of factors that we haven't controlled when we measure mental toughness, and we need to do that. We also haven't really investigated mental toughness in terms of the individual, like just me by myself. We need to do it. We need to figure out what's going on with team mental toughness. I didn't want to not include esports, right? We've never seen anything like esports in this industry. The way it's growing is amazing. So that's another thing that's really interesting that you could use in mental toughness research to investigate. Sports neuroscience, another subdiscipline of neuroscience that is new, and it is very interesting to throw in some mental toughness into that field. Behavioral genetics, and I will show you some more in a little bit. Rehabilitation, either in terms of psychology, rehabilitation psychology, or any kind of rehabilitation, such as cardiac rehabilitation. And mental toughness and adherence, it's another one because we have some preliminary evidence about how levels of mental toughness affect adherence in any kind of sports or rehabilitation program. All right, so let's now move to our work and how that ties in. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to first show you the main goal of mine and our lab, and I'm going to show you a timeline so you understand it is a journey. And if you are an undergrad or a grad, I want to inspire you to understand that this is a marathon, and no matter what your goal is in research, enjoy the process, and just a lot of things will just happen as you go, and take advantage of them, and be patient. Be patient. And then I'm going to show you where my partners are all around the world. I'm sorry, and then I will present them for a second because I am very appreciative. They've been very supportive, and I want to thank them. So the general goal of mine and our lab is to find a way to answer this question: how can I develop a mentally tough athlete and team? As Lynette said in the beginning, I've been a coach, a strength and conditioning coach for many years in Europe and in the US. I have great respect for all coaches, and especially strength and conditioning coaches, and you'll see it in a little bit. So when I go to those conferences and I talk to the coaches, I want to be able to answer this question when they ask me. When they ask me, okay, what you presented was great, so what am I doing now? So I'll go back to the weight room. What should I do? I want to be able to give them answers that are very, very clear. And I've been working into that. Again, it's a process. Okay, it's not something that I think I can answer completely tomorrow. Starting from the bottom and going up, a lot of my research, of course, is observational, and it's my fault as well that I've done a lot of cross-sectional work, as you can see at the bottom. It was needed though, so then we could have enough evidence to move it to longitudinal. We have done meta-analysis, and we're doing more now because we have enough evidence, enough papers to analyze them, meta-analyze them, and of course our lab is moving towards interventional work as well, and I'm going to explain it in a little bit because it has some unique characteristics. All right, so here's a timeline. This is my research journey, and I am going to highlight some of the things that I think I should highlight today, not all of them. But as I said before, for all the students that are watching, I really wanted to show them that this is a marathon. Okay, so these are my PhD years. So during my PhD years at Baylor, I was really interested, of course, into sports psych, and I was I didn't know how to call it. I didn't know it was called mental toughness. Before moving to the States, I was in the Greek Special Forces, so I was looking for that mental component, which I knew could make a difference, but I couldn't really define it or figure out how to develop it. So during my PhD years, I obviously read a lot, had good mentors, and as I was going through the literature, I ran into Daniel Gucciardi. So Gucci is a good friend now of mine, and he has been always an inspiration. It really helped me stay motivated throughout this journey. I also found CSCCA as a strength coach and in love with collegiate athletics. I found CSCCA, the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Association, the only strength and conditioning association that's for collegiate athletics. And I had that idea to do research for them and with them. So my dissertation was about mental toughness and strength and conditioning coaches, more specifically their master strength and conditioning coaches. So we are talking about the best of the best. Some other work that I did during my PhD years was again with elite strength and conditioning coaches, Big 5 conferences, and this was for strength and conditioning coaches that train only women. I'm very big in researching underrepresented groups, and one of those in applied sports psychology is women. So this was for female athletes, and it was a mixed method design. It was a very important, it's of course an abstract from Texas ACSM, but that was a very important project for me. So in 2017, that's the first product. That's the only thing I want to highlight, actually. Everything is not important compared to this. That's the first work that I did with Daniel. And I was really happy to do something with him. And again, for all of you listening out there, I didn't know him. I just reached out. I told him that he's amazing and I want to work with him. And here I was a couple of years later, publishing my first paper with him. That was actually inspired. I don't know if you remember Rutgers basketball with Coach Rice and some his coaching style and everything that happened, and he got fired. So that was inspired from those events. Now we're moving to 2018. My love for strength conditioning is still strong. I know strength and conditioning coaches are very interested in that thing. I am too, so I'm trying to investigate more. And I'm also at Plattsburgh, and I'm starting an undergrad program. I'm a huge proponent of undergrad research. I think I need to invest. I have to invest a lot of time and energy for my students so they can help them go places. So this is one of the important papers that I published, again, one of the first ones, and it showed pretty much that strength and conditioning coaches are no different than any other coaches, meaning that they love mental toughness, but they don't know really how it is, what it is actually, and they don't know how to train it. So more papers. This is with undergrads. We did a lit review on the conceptualization, so we try to help figuring out what's going on with that. That's one of the very first papers that was longitudinal, and I want to make a comment here about this paper with the rowers. First of all, females underrepresented, rowing underrepresented, so I was happy about that. But I want you to understand that in athletics, there are it's not easy to create the perfect experiment. I cannot go to a coach and ask them to break down the team into two groups. So I have the control group and the intervention group. It's a lot of times it is kind of impossible. So unfortunately, the work that we can do is, yes, longitudinal, but we cannot a lot of times do true experiments because the coach has to do their work, right? They cannot let me randomize and then use whatever intervention I want in half of them. Okay, that's something I wanted to point out here. 2019, that's the thing that I want to point out from our research in our lab is something that has helped us a lot since then is we try to translate the questionnaire. So I'm using MTI mainly from Daniel, Mental Toughness Index, MTI. So we created equivalent measures in Greek, obviously, published in Current Psychology, but also in Spanish. And that has helped me a lot with the things that I'm going to show you in a little bit. I really wanted to do Spanish. One of the main reasons is because it was completely undiscovered. And also I could reach out to countries that are not Western type. And that was really a thing that we were missing in the literature. So I was trying to find people to enter those countries. And that was the way we did it. So we had to translate it. And so we can give it to the collaborators we have over there, and they can use it to collect data. In 2020, we have a couple of things I would like to point out. We have this big review and meta-analysis. This is the meta-analysis that I used the table from 5 minutes ago. Huge project, huge project. We've been working on that for 5 years. A lot of good people there, as you can see. It is projected to have a lot of impact in the literature. It already has, and I'm happy about it because we invested a lot of work, and I thought it will help a lot of people advance the literature. Another big thing that we did is that we were motivated by catastrophic events that happened. Student athletes dying by suicide, and there was a report from NCAA talking about all these issues. So I thought we had to do something, and we did this research and we published it that investigated mental toughness, and it compared it in a way with something that looks opposite, different, which was self-compassion. And based on that research, we were able to make practical implications concerning the best practice, NCAA best practice on mental health number 4. We keep trying to investigate mental toughness in relation with other terms that are different, such as spirituality. So that's another seminal piece for me and my lab, and a lot of good people, a lot of great scientists, which I'm very, very grateful were involved in this project as well. All right, let's move to 2021. So here, of course, you know, COVID pretty much affected all of us, and research-wise, we couldn't do anything. I had to stop everything that I was doing with D1 teams, D2, D3, efforts that we've been working on for years and years to create connections, to persuade the coaches, to let us in those weight rooms to collect data, to do some interventions. So everything stopped when the championships were suspended. So we had to do something else. And I saw my students that were getting discouraged. So a lot of my work this year has to do with my students. And I try really to motivate them, keep them motivated. You know, some of them are still at home in anxiety, they don't know what's going on. So we were trying to help each other even through research. I want to point out one piece from Ariana, which is the piece that won the Greater New York chapter, and it's going to represent us in the national. So I want to use this year to pretty much talk about my amazing students and how well they've been doing. And this is from the Texas chapter that we actually submitted 16 abstracts. So we tried to be really productive, although COVID really hit our program in terms of research. Cardiac rehabilitation, we keep collecting data down in Texas. I want to thank Jeff. Also, you see, we collect data in Greece because we had to do something about COVID. So we had to change a little bit our agenda, because as researchers, we need to be adaptable and answer questions that need to be answered right now, right? So we did research. We saw that athletes were losing their identity, and by losing their identity because they were not playing, we had mental health issues. And also, I want to point out the one from Maddie at the end, which is an interventional work that we're doing. And we're trying to help athletes right now that are not playing with educational Ph.D, educational-based psychological skills training that is rooted in mental toughness. So I want to, again, congratulate and thank my amazing students for all this work. All right, and we're reaching 2021. A lot of things are in progress. We're doing a lot of meta-analysis on instruments, on the majority of mental toughness, which is observational research. We're trying to replicate our mental toughness, mental health, and self-compassion research in NAIA. We keep investigating mental toughness through spirituality and depression. Of course, I shouldn't forget my love, strength, and conditioning coaches. And if you know about the events at the University of Oregon with Rhabdo, University of Houston with Rhabdo again, and also the catastrophic event at the University of Maryland, there was a lot of backlash towards strength and conditioning coaches that they're doing military style training. So I had to go there, investigate that. So that's something that we are publishing right now. BDNF, the human gene. We are collecting data in Mexico in 2 locations right now, and in Greece. Mental toughness and cardiac rehabilitation, that's something we're doing for sure. Esports, definitely. With my friends from Ole Miss, we are creating a kind of an RPE for esports. If you're interested in something like that, look for TILT, T-I-L-T, and see how it's related to mental toughness. We keep doing EEG research. And as I already said, I have a sweet spot for underrepresented populations. So I want to include samples that haven't been included in the past. We have submitted grants out there for interventional work. So although COVID hit us hard in terms of our research plans, we adjusted and we are going pretty strong, actually. Geographically speaking, Daniel Bouchard is down there in Australia. So these are my people on the left side of Australia, at Perth. Of course, I have people at Greece, because where I'm coming from. And of course, I have collaborators in the USA, basically mainly at Baylor, Barry University, and Harvard. And in Central America, I have very good friends in Mexico and in Costa Rica that we're all working on several projects that have to do with mental toughness. And here they are. I couldn't put all of them, so I apologize. Daniel is top. one of my mentors, Pete Granzin from Ole Miss, the Dean of Research over there. I know him from Baylor. Grant is my mentor for my PhD, one of the best psychometricians in the country. I owe so much to him. Richard is at Harvard, very highly respected in positive psychology. Melanie at Clayton, she has helped me so much with the applied sports psychology organizations, and she has been such a good mentor in terms of course, mainly grants, and she's a huge proponent of females. And as you can see, we don't have a lot of females here, so I really value her opinion. I have Zach, my old roommate from Baylor, Jeff from Baylor, and then Pedro from Mexico, and Jose from Costa Rica. I want to thank all of them for all their help and support and inspiration all these years. All right, so we're done with the third part. Let's move, because we don't have a lot of time, to the take-home points. What you need to remember is that it is a term, mental toughness is a term that has been investigated mainly in the past 2 decades. There's a lot of enthusiasm, but we don't have enough evidence to match it. So we need to keep the enthusiasm up, but we also need to be very intentional with the evidence that we need right now. Definitely part of that is the quality of research we're doing. There's a lot of bias, so we need to address those. And we could address those because there's so many opportunities. I hope I prove to you that there's so many opportunities to do any kind of research that has to do with mental toughness, because there's so many areas that have not been explored yet. I want to thank you. These are all my handles on social media platforms. I use them specifically for communicating my work. And I've been investing a lot of time lately trying to break down my work and disseminate all the results, not only to practitioners, but to the public, because I think that's part of our job. It's not just publishing papers that only a few people read, but break down that information, show the practical implication, and actually try to access more people. So if you want to connect, I'll be happy to connect, and we can talk about mental toughness all day and all night. That's my passion, I promise. So these are my handles, and before I go, I want to remind you that we have our meeting here in April now with 5 CECs, lifestyle medicine, bringing the gap between clinicians and exercise specialists, and you're getting CECs for NSC as well, I'm sorry. So you're getting, if you are a strength and conditioning coach, a specialist, you get CECs from this meeting as well. All right, that was all. I'm gonna stop here, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andreas. That was a great presentation, and it's always fun to hear more about an area where there's room for more people to get into the game and more people to take this on in their own research work. So we are going to have some time right now for questions and answers. So one of the first questions is, how would you define mental toughness? And does that concept differ from other concepts like hardiness, resiliency, things like that?
Yeah, okay, very good question. So I didn't define it because I didn't want to use one definition, but in general, it is a characteristic that can help you achieve goals. So it has to do with goal-specific behaviors. And it's also related to keep trying to achieve those goals no matter what you face while you're trying to achieve them. So these are characteristics that all definitions that we have about mental toughness include. So the goal-directed behaviors, that's one, and overcoming adversity, facing adversity, that's the second part. So there are terms now that are very similar-ish, I would say. So definitely there are like resilience. Resilience is more general than mental toughness. Mental toughness, for example, is for people. A lot of resilience can be also about an economy, right? You can say the Greek economy was really resilient after COVID or something. You cannot say the Greek economy was mentally tough. So it's something that's an example. So mental toughness is something more specific. It's under the umbrella of resilience in a way. Another common one that I get is greed, right? So greed is different than mental toughness. Very popular, new term, a lot of people are using it. And greed is more about long-term goals that you have, but it's mainly about one. So greed focuses on one goal and putting effort in the long run. That's the greed. Mental toughness is something that you can have, for example, several goals at the same time, and those goals can be conflicting, such as I want to have a really high GPA, but also make the start line up. So I need to, invest a lot of time in the weight room as well. So they may be conflicting. Which one did you say? Did you say another one?
Resiliency.
Oh, resiliency, I did cover.
You covered that. So yeah, I think you covered.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you. That was really helpful. So one of the next questions is that you had mentioned an interest in underrepresented populations, but we didn't see any mention about work with African American populations. What impact would mental toughness have in those populations, considering there's usually a lack of access to resources and other social factors that are at play?
Yeah, so I didn't mention it, but we are trying to do research with African Americans, and more specifically even with females and African Americans. So two underrepresented groups. We've done already with EEG, and we have found some great results about hemispheric specialization when it comes to mental toughness. But if we, from a social justice perspective, of course they need to be included, and from even a practical perspective, they need to be included because we have so many African American athletes. So we need to be able to include them and answer questions that have to do with more specific samples, some more specific groups. So for some reason, there are some groups that are underrepresented, but that's why I'm pointing it out, and I'm saying that we need to include them for ethical reasons, but also for what's the word I'm looking for? For scientific reasons. We need to include those parts of whatever we don't know. So we need samples from Asia. We need females. We need African Americans. We need older adults. We need people that have not been represented in applied sports psychology for the past 2 decades, and specifically in mental toughness.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I think, not only African Americans, as you mentioned, but others who might be facing different challenges, maybe international folks who have immigrated or folks in other countries. To what extent do you think then that culture may play a role in mental toughness?
That's a great question. We have some preliminary evidence to know that culture plays a huge role, but we don't have enough. So we do know, we've done some work with samples from Asia, and based on their culture, we've seen already, we have preliminary evidence that they're so strict about themselves. And because mental toughness is something that you are assessing yourself, on average, they're assessing themselves lower than Northern Americans, for example. So that is very, very interesting, first of all, to see it, to find it, and then to try to identify why this is happening, okay? But that's a very interesting question. Culture plays a huge role in psychological constructs such as mental toughness. So again, you're right. We haven't investigated, and we should.
Great. Is there a link to the MTI assessment? Or how would
Yes.
you find that?
They can go online and Google Mental Toughness Index, Daniel Gucciardi, or they can just let me go. They can just find me and I'll send it to them. It's right now it's in English, Chinese, Malay, Spanish, and Greek. So I don't know what kind of population they're interested in investigating, but they're all available online for free.
Perfect. Okay, our next question is about, it's sort of twofold. One, has there been much research in military populations around mental toughness? And then second, do you think there might be specific occupations or branches within the military that should be researched, or aspects of selection and deployment that might be highly related to mental toughness?
All right, that's another. We have very good questions today. Okay, so yes, I do think that military should be investigated. There is an instrument, it's called MTI, that has been designed for the military. There is some research out there. The issue is more logistical. It's not easy to gain access to that kind of personnel. And when you do gain access, that data goes back to them. A lot of times we are not allowed to use it for anything. There is some research out there. Now, people that are getting deployed or specific, yeah, I mean, everybody should be included. We shouldn't just do special ops or anything else. It would be very, very interesting. Again, it is more about getting access for me. I've tried, it's not that easy. And when you do get access, a lot of times I cannot use the data. I can only give it back to them because it's for their use only. So I agree, but there are some issues that have to do with access.
All right, so our next question is, are you familiar with growth mindset? That's Carol Dweck's work. If so, do you see a correlation with growth mindset and mental toughness?
Yes, I am familiar. Of course, I'm not an expert. I do see a correlation. The definition and the conceptualization that I'm using, you could say that some of the supporting theories behind mental toughness, the way Daniel has conceptualized it, have like overlap with the growth mindset, but it's not one that we are using per se. We can use self-efficacy, or we use, grit, or we use SPI or others, but it's not one that Daniel has used to conceptualize mental toughness. But I do see that they overlap. Yes.
Great. So I know earlier in your presentation, you mentioned that you haven't investigated all the potential individual factors that might be related to mental toughness, but can you give us an idea of what things generally do correlate with mental toughness?
You mean in terms of characteristics? Okay, if I got your question right, for example, that's what you're saying. We know, for example, that men on average score higher than women. Okay, we don't know why, but we do know that they score higher. We do know also that, at least from what I have collected, Western countries participants on average score them higher than Asian ones. That has to do with culture. Age plays a factor, indeed. We do know, of course, that people who are more successful score themselves higher mental toughness than less successful. What else am I missing? We haven't found it. We haven't found a difference based on race. At least we don't have enough data.
Have you investigated social relationships at all, and whether or not having, robust social life, for example, is related to mental toughness?
That's what we're doing right now. That's what we're doing right now. Actually, we just send it out. So that's definitely something that we're interested in, but it wasn't for some reason one of the things that we investigated first. But we are sending out now all over the U.S. battery of psychological tests, and that's included. So yes.
Awesome. And sort of a follow-up, kind of related. Do we know whether something like cardiovascular fitness is related to mental toughness at all?
You mean that in which direction? If mental toughness affects CRF, or if CRF affects mental toughness?
Yeah, if cardiorespiratory fitness is better cardiorespiratory fitness is related to better mental toughness, higher level.
I wouldn't say yes in everything that we have collected, but when we investigate athletes, yes. When we investigate general population, not always.
Great. Okay, we're gonna finish this up with one final question. So we have a strength and conditioning coach who would like to know more about, what's the best way that person, he or she can collect data from their athletes who are bodybuilders, so that they have a profile or, something to work from, so that they can help them develop their mindsets and mental toughness.
Well, he or she can contact me, definitely. That's not an easy question to answer. It's very interesting, of course, and I would love to help. It depends on what exactly they're trying to measure. I would start with figuring out what they are trying to measure and why is that important to their performance, and then identify the way to measure that. So if they're going to go for mental toughness, they can definitely use MTI. Not sooner than 2 weeks between the measurements, because we haven't seen any changes. And then MTI has 8 questions, and each question represents one key dimension of mental toughness. For example, the first question is about self-efficacy, or the second question is about attention regulation. So based on scores on individual items, they can definitely identify weaknesses and strengths and can start working on them. Of course, I can tell a strength coach to do work that a psychologist or a mental coach are qualified to do, so I don't want to say something like that, but that's the way these things work is, of course, first of all, you do some measurements based on what you want to measure, and then based on the results, you design an intervention and you go from there. If that coach would like to contact me, I would be more than willing to give more details while I understand more about what he or she is looking for.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Stamatis. I think you really sparked a great discussion, and several people might be reaching out to you afterwards. So that's always good as well. At this point, we want to thank Andreas for a great presentation and his time, and thank the Greater New York chapter for recommending that Andreas join us today. I also want to remind folks that the ACSM International Health and Fitness Summit will be virtual this year. It will take place April 7 through 14. Registration is open, so join us for that. Our annual meeting, the ACSM annual meeting, will also be virtual this year, June 1 through June 5th. Registration is open for that as well. And then finally, for those of you who are interested in continuing education, be sure to visit acsm.org/CE online, where we have a lot of different resources that you can participate in for continuing education. So thanks again to Andreas. Everybody have a great weekend. And with that, we will end the webinar.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.